So today we have Delia Ferreira Rubio, and I'm very glad to have you. Hello.
Hello, how are you, Virginie? Nice to join you.
Nice. Delia Ferreira Rubio, you are the chair of Transparency International, but also an international lawyer. A lot of work has been done by you on political elections and political financing, and you are also focusing on technology and ethics. So we have a lot of topics to tackle today. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Delia, can I ask you the first question? What does public value mean to you?
Well, public value is really a new way in which we can put together the forces of business, but also society. I think that in this time of the world, it is clear that society wants to participate more actively and wants to be listened by the traditional decision-making actors in society, not only in terms of political activity, which is clear now, but also in terms of business and other decision makers in society. So, and I think we have realized that that building trust among these actors contribute to the well-being of the whole society. So there are no and there is no one elite that knows everything and that can paternalistic decide for us, but we also have the right to be listened, and we have good ideas and we can work together better if we will trust instead of being fighting against each other or trying to create barriers or gaps in society.
We have seen in the past few years increasingly huge demonstrations of people by millions in the streets in many countries across all continents, requesting a cleaner government, a fight against corruption. This is really your field. And people kept saying that they are not heard. How do you think we can show that we listen to them a lot more?
Well, I think that these mobilizations has been very important, but they are restricted to the first moment when society faces scandals of corruption. So the indignation is so great that people have come out to the streets and show how angry they are against corrupt guys or corrupt crops all over the world. So we as civil society organizations have a duty to generate the channels through which this energy can be expressed and listened by those taking the decisions. And this is an important part because in fact, when a prime minister assumes office or a president is elected, the first speech without doubt include a phrase saying, I am committed against corruption, I am committed for transparency. And I keep on saying that we are fed up with commitments. We need action. We need concrete measures taken, monitored, implemented, evaluated, with the participation of society. In that sense, for instance, the OGP movement, the Open Government Partnership movement, is important because they put in the same table governments and civil society with a plan, co-created plan, in order to put measures into action, to transform the committees into real things that change the life of people. Because in the end, everyone wants to be here, be listened in order to better things or to their interests to be considered and their problems to be solved. And that is the end. To solve the problems, to better the situation, to protect climate or to improve job availability in societies and all that. So we have to stop filling paper with declarations and signing very powerful commitments. We have to listen people, to really open the ways of participating in important issues. And to give you an example, one government says we are committed to open government and to participation, and then they ask the citizens whether they would like to have dogs in metros. Okay, guys, ask people important issues they are involved to, not these silly questions just to say we have consulted the people whether they like dogs in the trains. And this is a tricky thing, because in many countries what we see is that this participation are just formal channels where you can leave a message or suggest an idea or things like that, but nobody takes care of these ideas, nobody answers these questions. So we have to really involve in participation. Co-creation is not just putting a new seat at the table, but really listening what this new person is saying, or this new representative is saying, and answering. So I think participation is dialogue, not a career of monologues. It's not enough to be there to deliver a speech. What we need is to engage in a conversation. So you can convince me and I can convince you. And in the end, it is supposed, as we are intelligent and smart human beings, we will arrive to a proper or better solution.
That's right. It's a two-way movement. It's listening and taking on board. So usually what is not heard is the reporting part of what was done thanks to what you told us. Yes. So participation is not only a passive listening, but how you implement things. Do you think this is the role of civil society organizations to push for such monitoring and such a reporting?
I am sure that we have to push, because although political actors or important business people keep on saying that they are listening, I think they are not listening properly. So I think that civil society has to push a little more on that in order to guarantee that the voice of the people is really heard.
And heard on important things, as you said.
Yeah, not on the silly things.
Yes.
It's not just for show off or pour la galerie, but really an real exercise of dialogue and hearing and exchanging opinions.
That's interesting, because you're talking about the quality of dialogue. And not only the fact that dialogue needs to happen. It's as if dialogue was already agreed in many countries, not everywhere, but very often it exists, but the quality of dialogue is actually what is missing. We saw it in France recently with the Yellow Jackets. This is a social movement that has been there for months just because the participants keep saying, we are still not heard.
Yeah, sometimes it is difficult to satisfy all the expectations and all the requests or asks from society. I understand that the resources are limited, the capacity of action is limited also. In some cases, you as a president can hear and be really willing to change things, but you have to go to parliament and you probably are in minority in the parliament, so you have to get to compromises with other political forces. It's not easy, but what we have to show is that we are in the way of trying to deliver on what we have assumed as a compromise or as a commitment.
Right, and it's important also to avoid the greenwashing, the new type of greenwashing of government participation. Another type of superficial thing is actually the use of technology and innovation. These are also topics that are used and sometimes even abused without bringing anything very concrete to society.
Yeah, because the idea is that technology is modern, it is cool, so a government put in place a web page and with a place where you can comment or add ideas or whatever it is, but nobody check what is there in these channels. And technology is just a tool. So with a hammer, you can put a nail on the wall very efficiently, but you can also cause damages to a person if you use it against a person. So it's a tool, and it depends on the use you do with the tool. It's not enough to be modern and use technology. You have to really facilitate things with technology, and technology is very useful for that. But for instance, in terms of access to information, which is in the basis of this real quality dialogue with high quality or high quality dialogue, you can conduct this kind of co-creative interaction if you have the information available. Because if not, what has happened for many years, you go to a politician and say, I have this idea to do so and so, and the answer was inevitably, yeah, the problem is that you have no information about this. I have the information, so I'm doing it in another way, and you have to study a little more. But we didn't have access to the information. So we created the tools in order to ask for information, etc. Now technology facilitates that. But just creating a portal where all the supposed available data of a government is posted is not enough, because sometimes this is the way of hiding information. The best way to hide an elephant in a square is to fill the square with elephants, those data. And sometimes governments use the tools or the technology just to overload not the substantial information sometimes, but silly information or not important one, in order to say, well, we have fulfilled our duty, we have delivered, the information is there. But it's the information really useful is hidden in a mountain of data without the possibility to really understand the information that is available and useful for the people.
That's right. So here again, it's about quality of information, but it's also about whether the intention is genuine or not.
Yeah, yeah. An important thing is that to talk about an open and transparent government, you need to give the information, taking into account that that part of the work is just the beginning for a co-creative activity with the citizens. So you have to be really committed to give the substantial information in a usable way, free of charge, of course, and that this information is not enough to say you are transparent and open. In order to be open as government today, you have to allow a substantial dialogue with society.
But what has changed, Delia, then in the past few years? We see blockchain really developing fast. We see artificial intelligence, but with this very interesting conversation we're having, it is absolutely clear that a government that would not be genuine about transparency and openness will remain not transparent. Mm-hmm. So how can we change that?
Well, I think that when we talk about technologies, as we said before, they are tools, so they can be used for good and for evil, of course. And we have to take that into account. For many years, technology has been like a closed or dark box, only accessible for those knowing technology, the engineers and the programmers. And I think that when we start using technology for the sake of taking public policy decisions or engaging with society, we have to incorporate another element in the mix, because technology is not neutral as it is presented usually. Technology can be biased. Technology can lead to the wrong decisions and can affect people. And if these tools are being used in order to decide public policies or the life of people, the rights and the freedom of people, we have the right to know what's behind these softwares and wonderful names, very sophisticated and difficult to understand. Like if it is like an elite language, let's say. So we are kept aside of that, as we were not rightful to know what they are using in order to decide. And this is very clear in the, let's say, 3 or 4 years, where ethics has been involved in this conversation about technology in the universities, in the international forum. We are hearing, okay, technology is great, but please take care of the challenges and the risks involved in technology. For instance, blockchain is very famous name now, it's a fashion thing, and it is presented and sold by those developing the tools as the magic solution for all corruption problems in the world, because transparency will be perfect with blockchain.
Well, blockchain allows for input from a number of stakeholders, and therefore it opens up the ecosystem of any project.
Blockchain in particular has the possibility to secure information because it distributed the databases, let's say, in order to speak very simple, in different nodes. So in order to change an information, you have to change all the nodes, and that seems impossible. So in this sense, this is a very useful technology, for instance, and it is being used for by some states nowadays to guarantee security of property registers, land registers. So you put the information and the information is distributed. So you can be a corrupt guy with a corrupt notar and a lawyer and try to steal the property of someone, changing the papers and register them. It will be impossible to modify the situation, just modifying one of the registers because it has been distributed. In that sense, it secures the information. In many countries in Latin America, we have had scandals, and also in Africa, we are facing scandals in terms of land property. People that are deprived of their legal property because some corrupt or fraudulent action. With blockchain as the basis of the registers, you can guarantee that this is not happening anymore. But blockchain is also the technology which is in the basis of cryptocurrencies, the Bitcoins and all that. And cryptocurrencies guarantee anonymity of the real owner of things, of this currency. And in that sense, for instance, the blockchain is not facilitating the work of those fighting corruption, because for years we have said, follow the money and you will find the people involved in the corrupt deal. Well, if there is a barrier guaranteeing anonymity using blockchain, well, I'm sorry, we are in a problem there. So it depends on the tools and it depends on the use you can do with that tools. And if we talk about, for instance, algorithms that are used to decide on your on your rights, on your access to public subsidies, on any decision that has to do with the jobs you are available to get, the information, or the credit you are asking at the bank, and who decides whether you will receive the loan or not. If this software, if these algorithms include some instruction in terms of a biased decisions, for instance, one line in the program says, okay, if the one asking the credit is a woman, so say no and keep on going. And we are not aware what is in the algorithms. We will be the victims of this without absolutely knowing or holding to account this kind of tools to decide things. So I think in this moment, and for many years we have been preparing ourselves, and we are more or less good at that, to hold to account the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary, because those were the actors that decide on our life. But my question is, are we ready to hold to account algorithms? And in that sense, we should start asking, what does the algorithms establish? Who developed the algorithm? Is there any bias in the algorithms against women, against race, against religion, or whatever it is? And nowadays, these algorithms are being used, for instance, in terms of traffic violation in some countries. Those determining the result or the punishment that you will receive are algorithms. And these algorithms were created because they, the producers realized that judges in the morning after breakfast and being starting the day were not so strong, or not so strong against those that has violated the rules. And at the time of the lunch approaches, and they are tired of the whole day of work, they began to be more stronger for the same violation. So the result was inequality vis-a-vis those committing the violation. And the ones creating the algorithm say, okay, we will solve it with a machine that will deliver the result of the punishment to be applied. The problem is that probably the person who developed the algorithm is also a person that has breakfast and is not so tired, or has a quarrel with a wife and is very angry. So that can be embedded in the algorithm, and we are not seeing it.
That's really fascinating. So we're saying that we need to enlarge the scope of what we understand as being corruption and transparency, and maybe request even the transparency of algorithm. Who did it and who is responsible for it? Because so far, I don't think we have any text that keeps anyone responsible for an algorithm.
Yeah, that's the problem. And the creator of the algorithm can be very detached from the situation, both in terms of time or even the geographical area. It's not the public official you have in front of you or the judge you have in front of you. It can, the machine is operating on a software created, but who knows? And another thing that we have to take into account is privacy rights and who access the data, and what are the uses that this data is being put to. Because, for instance, if you talk about facial recognition,
yes.
Oh, well, there are some governments using facial recognition nowadays in order to to harass or to discriminate some population. That's what's happening in China, for instance. Every citizen is identified with this technology of facial recognition. But in some parts of the country, they are loading to the software the characteristics of a certain Muslim population. So it's like you have all the characteristics of these Muslim identified characteristics. So you are identified as part of that community, which is being harassed by the government or discriminated by the government. And you are identified, and afterwards you will be suffering the consequences of that, although you are not aware of what is happening. So we have to...
Facial recognition is used everywhere by all governments under the fight against terrorism. We have it in the Western world as well.
Yeah, of course. And for instance, they say, we are just looking for criminals.
Yes.
So we have the pictures of criminals and that's all we have. That's not true. Because in order to identify a person in a metro station,
yes,
to be a criminal or not, they are looking for, you have to take the picture of the person in the metro in order to compare, because you have to compare in order to identify. So you are taking the image of that person, and what are you doing with that data? Yes, as government or anyone who can access that, because it is the user or it is the owner of the software, of the copyright, or whatever it is. It's not only the government, or is the government, and with all the strength of the power of the state. Beside that, there are many things that we should be taking care very quickly, I would say, because these technologies, as you say, are being used nowadays. So we have to start looking at that. And also the concentration of power. We were talking about involving people and opening the table and dialoguing among others, not only those taking decisions. My impression is that with this artificial intelligence and the algorithms, we are going to face a concentration of power, not just as the typical concentration of power in the president's hands or in the cabinet hands, but probably some other people will have this information about the whole population, and eventually will be able to manipulate that. They are also trying to manipulate our political decisions through this fake news or this misinformation. So when you talk about your public value, you are talking about building trust.
Yes.
In a moment, let's say, where truth is being questioned. So can you build trust without truth? That's the question. And who is manipulating that situation is, for me, a clear challenge in the future in terms of our society and our politics. That's what I call algocracy, the government by algorithms.
That's an interesting concept, but it also shows us that there is a lot to do in terms of policy. And do you think that there is work to do towards the regulators, the same way Transparency International in history has played a key role with the UN Convention Against Corruption? Do you think there is room now to create a new convention or a new work with the regulators?
There are many international fora working on nowadays on the governance of algorithms. There is a trend, and I think it will take time, as it took time to generate the conventions to protect human rights and then the conventions against corruption. But I think that many people is aware now that the techno-optimism is okay, but you have to regulate that in a way that it creates standards to protect basic rights and basic freedoms. And this is something that the society has gone in other situations. When the basic ethic duties and compromises cease to be enough in a society, we go to a next phase as society to create laws and to create rules that can be imposed by an authority. When it is a moral issue or an ethic issue, what you think is good or bad, right or wrong, is the determinant of your conduct. When we move to the law, if the law says this is what should be done, an external authority that can impose and implement that. So societies, when ethic values are not enough in one realm of the activity, start creating the laws. For instance, many years ago, we start creating public ethic laws. Okay, why? Because the public ethics was not enough. So you need the strength of the law, of the formal thing behind it. And this law starts by saying it is the duty of public officials to be honest. Okay. For many years, it was enough with the agreements in society that you have to be honest. Yes. When that is not enough, that social consensus is not enough, or is not strong, or it has been broken because it is not clear any longer in a community what's right and what's wrong. So you put it in the law. And now I think we are going to go in the same path towards some governance standards or principles in terms of artificial intelligent ethics and the ethics or justice of algorithms. That's the trend I think we are going, and I think it is useful because we are facing a big challenge here. So let's go with that, but with the participation, and that is very important. We cannot leave these standards for parliamentarians or congressmen that cannot distinguish a Facebook from Apple, for instance, and think they are the same thing, or those that, for instance, in UK, were discussing education and policy with a robot, because it is cool to discuss policy with robots without asking who has charged the robot with the ideas the robot was voicing in a way. So we need the tech community here, and we need the legal community here together with society and creating or co-creating, particularly in this case, co-creating the standards. If we go just lawyers and politicians creating the standards, we are going in the wrong direction, because we need the knowledge of the tech community here in order to create something sound and reasonable. If not, we are mistaken.
That is clearly public value, and beyond that, it's in the interest of the public to really make sure that control goes back to society.
And the world is changing. For instance, for many years, we have resort to the global international forum to support and create the standards against corruption and put together countries working together against corruption. We are still trying to use that fora in the fight against corruption, but at the same time, we are seeing in the world that we are going probably in a trend against globalization. And we are facing a moment where multi-stakeholders fora, or the multilaterals are being attacked even by governments, and we are seeing these trends to separate things and to come back to more nationalistic trends and values. And in that sense, we are probably losing the strength of multilateral platforms in the fight against corruption or in the fight in favor of human rights in general. So I think that we have to take care of these anti-globalization trends and movements that we are seeing in very important countries or leading countries in the world. So as the world changes, we have also to change our approaches in order to get freedoms protected, human rights protected, and transparency also as a value that enlarge the possibility of society to really participate in the co-creation of our future.
I know that you advise a lot of governments, and I don't want to get into specific details, but imagine a government who would like to get into active participation with its citizens and rely on technology and being overwhelmed. What would be your first advice?
I think that we have to keep our eyes open and our ears open to what is happening in the world first. We are not in silos. We are facing many different situations in the world. The solutions are not one-fits-all type of solution. So we have to take care of particular situations in different countries and in different fields of activity. And we have to really commit to be part of a community and not just individuals alone, which is one of the challenges we are facing today in terms of society trends and what we are seeing. We are seeing that technology and social media and all that have created a community which is not the real community of meeting together and talking, really talking between two persons, but we are just the screen and our friends are the Facebook friends, and our participation is Twitter, which has a very aggressive language in many countries. So we are reduced or we are pushed to be more individualistic than community members. And that's another thing that we have to take into account, because in order to defend ourselves and our values against this concentration of power or the populistic approaches or these authoritarian regimes, we have to be together and to build trust among ourselves and among the whole community. So we have to take care of that also. What's important is that we can do things together, and that the value is to try, really try to hear to others and to be open to new ideas and to the big idea of working together as a group. I really think that the groups are much more than the sum of each individual, no? And that's the great thing of co-creating our future.
That's fantastic. Delia, thank you so much for this really, really fascinating conversation. You were connected from Argentina, and we had a bit of unstable internet connection, but I think it's okay. We heard you very well. And I really want to thank you for your time and for sharing your views. We hope to welcome you soon again.
Thank you, Virginie, and good luck with your public value.
Thank you, Delia.
Bye.
Goodbye.